So Trump says now that all of Joe Biden's pardons don't count. And I think on the left, we shouldn't fight this on him. Fine. If one president can revoke an old president's pardons, I think we should let that happen. That way, when Trump's not in office, we can revoke all of the pardons he passes and throw all those motherfuckers in jail. Like, I'm okay with this. Like, I never thought there was a good idea for the president to have the power to just unilaterally pardon people anyway. I've always thought that was a stupid fucking idea. Now, granted, the way the Constitution's written, Trump doesn't actually have this power, but apparently his followers don't give a fuck about the Constitution at all anymore. I mean, they're ignoring judge orders now, so who gives a fuck about the pardon laws in the Constitution, right? I mean, MAGA's thrown out the Constitution completely at this point, so who gives a fuck if Donald Trump can revoke Joe Biden's pardons? Let him. And then when we get rid of that motherfucker, the next president can revoke all of Trump's pardons and throw all these MAGA fucks in jail. Sounds like a fair deal to me. You know, one of the worst things about our hyper-individualist, country that we've created is how easily they're able to sell people on a stupid idea by making it seem like it'll benefit a small group of people. Like charter schools. They're selling charter schools to the middle class and middle, working classes, a way that your poor kid can get into private school. But that's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is the private schools are still going to take the rich kids, and now they're just going to use public school money to help pay for the rich kids' education and cut your kids' education. Because they're not going to give you enough for the charter school to actually pay for private school. So what they're going to do is give a tax break to rich people who can't afford private school and then cut the funding out of your kids' education. And what I don't get about the hyper-individualist thing is they're all like, well, then my kid will get the private education and that'll make him better, but all the other kids will just be dumber. And it's like, why do you want to live in a situation where everyone's dumb? We would be so much better off if we paid way more for public education and everyone was smarter. I don't even have kids, but if they doubled my tax that went to public education, I'd be okay with that, because I would rather be surrounded by intelligent people than fucking MAGA morons. Funny thing about that is that's true. In the 60s and 70s, the boomers did fight against all that. And then you guys all voted for Reagan and sucked up the trickle-down economics like it was true. And now boomers are all voting for whatever they can to defend themselves and screw their children and grandchildren. That's going to be the boomer legacy. The boomers are going to be they're going to go down in history as the first generation whose kids and grandkids did worse than them in the history of America. That's what boomers are going to be famous for. They were called the me generation by their parents, and they will be called the me generation by their children and grandchildren. The boomers are the me generation. They took all of the social programs that they could, got cheap college, got everything they could, and as soon as they got into power enough to vote, they started stripping all those things from all the people who come after them. That's why most boomers got to go to college and pay for it with a part-time job, and none of their kids can. Thanks, boomers! Does anybody else think it's really messed up that the U.S. government pays billions and trillions of dollars to design all this weapons equipment like the F-22, the F-35, the F-16, all of our tanks, the Bradleys, all this stuff? But then when the weapons companies sell that stuff to other countries, we don't get the profit? I mean, think about that. The U.S. taxpayers pay for all the weapons development. We pay for all the weapons design. We pay for their factories to be built. We pay for all of the infrastructure for these weapons manufacturers. But then when they sell the weapons to other countries, none of that goes to the U.S. government. It all goes to these private corporations. I feel like these should be nationalized, and all that profit should go to the government. I mean, if we have to pay to design the weapons, build the factories to build the weapons, why the fuck does the profits go to a bunch of CEOs who didn't even pay for the investment? Alright, well, this is going to be a long video, but you asked for it. If I could control everything for a few years and just get my way, the first thing I would do is I would take half of the U.S. military's budget and give it to the Army Corps of Engineers, who are some of the most capable engineers on the planet. You should see some of the amazing things they can do. And I would have them invest in the infrastructure of the United States. That's $500 billion a year in infrastructure. And since it wouldn't be private companies doing it, it would be the Army Corps of Engineers. They would get it done much faster, and we could actually have high-speed rail all the way across the country, includes public transit, make all that kind of stuff better. Then I would tax the top rich people at the top 1% at 90% of their income, like we used to back in the 60s, and then I would take all that fucking money and I would use it to invest in a universal basic income, which would pay the entire population like $1,500 a month just to survive. That would be your base level. Everyone would just get that. Then I would take all the excess food that we have created, now that we have a better infrastructure system where we could actually move it around better, and I would immediately start using that excess food to feed the rest of the population. While I was doing that, I would continue to cut the US military budget. It would still be the largest in the world, but I would use all of that money to feed the entire planet. Because I've got a hunch that if we fed the entire planet, which would cost way less than our current military budget does, it would literally cost less than 10% of our military budget to make sure there was not a single starving human being on the entire planet. And I would do that, and I think that would do more for, national defense than our military ever could, because, who the hell would want to bomb us if we are feeding the entire planet? And that would just be a start, First off, U.S. aid and foreign aid is not charity. It's soft power. We do that so that we can make better deals with those countries, and we can really exploit them and rob them of resources. If you understood capitalism, you'd understand that. Like, U.S. aid is largely a CIA function that does propaganda around the world and increases the United States' relationships with other countries. It's soft power. It's not charity. And if you understood geopolitics at all, you would understand that. But the main thing that blows me away is the people who always say this are the same people who then vote against giving free school lunches to kids here in America. See, whenever they say this, that they're going to give the money to the Americans, they never do. They just give tax cuts to billionaires and rich people. Like Trump's new tax plan gives a bunch of tax cuts to rich people and billionaires and actually raises taxes on everybody who makes less than like $400 and something thousand a year. So when are they going to give the money to the poor people here? Because they keep cutting what we're spending, but they just give all the money to the rich people. They don't ever help poor people. Well, that all depends on what I'm getting out of my taxes. Would I be okay with a 60% tax increase, tax rate, if we had 0 homeless people and 0 hungry children? Yeah. If we had universal health care, no hungry children in the entire country, and no homeless people, but I had to pay 60% in taxes, I'd be all right. Like, it would suck. I'd have to pay quite a bit more. My life would probably get a little bit worse. But the fact of the matter is, if that meant that there were no hungry children, no homeless people, all right, that sounds like a worth the deal. I'll take that. So it all depends on what I'm getting. Would I pay 60% in taxes for what the U.S. government currently does? No, the U.S. government spends most of its money on military, which is a waste of fucking money. If we spent 1/3 of our military budget on feeding and housing, there would be no homeless or hungry people on the entire fucking planet. That's wild, right? But you're okay with the tax money going to build another fucking F-35 at what, $14 trillion now, and the things still don't fucking fly? One of the things that I think is funny about all these traditional values men who are like, I can't find a traditional values woman. You don't make enough money for a traditional values woman. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, a traditional values woman would mean that you, as the man, go to work all the time, and she stays home. She doesn't have to work. She cleans the house and does all the housely things, and you go to work. If you make less than $200,000 a year in America, that is unrealistic. And if you're expecting a woman to do all the traditional value stuff and still go to work, you're just a selfish piece of crap. Like, I'm sorry. Like, the idea that you think you deserve the traditional wife, but you don't make enough money to support the traditional wife, means you're just a fucking hypocrite. You can't expect a woman to do just as much work as you at work and then come home and do all the household chores. You're just a selfish piece of shit. 3.2 million people. That's how many people they estimate are going to be unalived because of the United States canceling USAID. 3.2 million of the poorest people on the planet are going to be unalived because Elon Musk decided to cut USAID. And if you're curious as to what that costs you, your average taxpayer, I did some Googling. The average taxpayer, which means most of you pay much less than this, but the average is $312 a year from the average U.S. citizen goes to USAID. If $312 a year is too damn much money to save 3.2 million people's lives for you, then there's something wrong with the way your brain works. Because I'm sorry, if I would know that $1,000 of my tax money would save 1 million people, I would pay that. So $312 of my tax money, and I pay above average because I make quite a bit more than average. So I actually pay more than the $312. But if that can save 3.2 million lives, that seems 100% worth it. Instead of giving Elon Musk another $1 billion to go blow up another fucking rocket. Does anybody else think it's crazy that if we lived in the Batman universe when Bruce Wayne's parents got unalived, we'd all been cheering for it? I mean, think about it. Bruce Wayne's parents were billionaire assholes who were fucking, doing their billionaire shit, running the whole fucking city, doing fucking crime and all this kind of crap. Probably owned some healthcare companies, so they're probably like a healthcare CEO. And then somebody, poor person, got pissed off and went and unalived them. And I believe that if we lived in that world, you'd see people like me making videos going like, well, I wish they wouldn't have done it in front of the kid, but I understand, and sometimes you got to take your shot when you get it. How often are you going to see the Waynes walking down the street? And I just think it's crazy that we live in a world now where the average person would have been cheering for the guy who took out Bruce Wayne's parents. And if you don't realize, Batman's the bad guy in that comic book because he has the money to fix all of Gotham's problems, and instead he uses that money to buy technology and then go beat up poor people. Yeah, you should read history books that are written from people of all different political persuasions. If you only read history books written from capitalist perspectives, then you're gonna get a very biased view of history. That's why most Americans don't know anything about their own history. You should read books written from every political perspective. I mean, shit, I read Mein Kampf. That doesn't make me a national socialist. If you can't read and digest different views from different people, then your brain doesn't work. Then you should read more books because then you'll be able to do that. And this is a history book we're talking about that has a full bibliography where he cites all of his sources. So unless you're going to refute his sources, which you can't because it's a very well-sourced book, the author's perspective isn't really viable. It's a history book. It tells the history of the United States. The fact that you can't read a book because it might have a scary political agenda means you're weak-minded. Does it ever blow anyone else away just how little we actually know about our U.S. history? Like, if you ask most Americans why the Revolutionary War was fought, they'll give you some crap about a tea tax, or some people will say it's because they stopped allowing Americans to use colonial script or some other crap. But nobody talks about the Royal Proclamation of 1763, which was the King of England made a deal with the Native Americans that no settler colonialists would go west of the Appalachian Mountains. Now, the people in Virginia and all these other colonies were very, very upset about this because they wanted to go, murder a bunch more natives and steal their land. And the king would not let them do that anymore. And it blows me away because we're not taught this at all in American history. But that's the primary reason that we rebelled against the British, was because they weren't going to let us go murder a bunch more natives. So they detained another green card holder. I think that's 2 or 3 now that they've just grabbed off the streets. No charges filed. I would say they arrested him, but if there's no charges filed, it's not really arrested. And for all you maggots out there who are going to try to defend this, You can't say you're for the Constitution and that you believe in the inalienable rights of the Constitution and then say that some people don't get them. You see, because if they're inalienable rights, then they're given for being a human being. So every human being on the planet should have them. And if you don't believe in that, then you don't actually believe in rights. And if you're for this, are you going to be okay when some Democratic politician gets into office and starts rounding up people that he doesn't like and detaining them without cause? Are you really going to be okay with that? Because you remember, whatever one administration does, the next administration can do too. So if you're okay with Trump grabbing people off the streets with no charges and no fucking legal reason to do it, don't be surprised when the Democrats start grabbing people next. So Trump invoked the Aliens Enemies Act to get rid of Venezuelan gangs, which I don't understand. But luckily a judge already blocked it because, like the judge said, the Alien Enemies Act has to do with war and being invaded and enemies. We're not currently at war. So you can't use wartime powers unless we're at war. So unless you can get Congress to declare war against the Venezuela, then you can't use the Alien Enemies Act to deport Venezuelans. I swear this shit's not that complicated, but apparently the Republicans either can't figure this out or they just lie constantly. I lean way more towards they just lie constantly because, I mean, they're lawyers. They passed the bar. They must have been able to figure out how to read legal documents, right? But we'll see if this holds up with the judge, because you know they're going to appeal it to all the way up to the Supreme Court, and we'll see what they say at that point. But as far as I'm concerned, you can't use war powers when we're not at war, right? So just because Republicans don't like it doesn't mean that climate change isn't going to fuck this country up. You've seen all these tornadoes that's going on, and there's like all across the South, and apparently 18 people have already died, which is just horrible. And there's massive flooding in West Virginia, just massive flooding in West Virginia. And, you know, nature's just throwing around some weather, I guess. Perfect time for Trump administration to totally want to gut FEMA and get rid of it completely. Because, you know, I'm sure West Virginia's got the money to refix all the problems there. And all these places that are getting hit with tornadoes in these little towns that have no infrastructure or money whatsoever, I'm sure that the state will be fine to take care of them. I swear. And what's funny to me is that all the religious people, whenever something happens bad in a blue state, they're like, that's God punishing them. So what is it now when all of the bad weather seems to be happening in red states? Does anybody else ever notice that the exact same people who talk about how they're so afraid of trans people in the bathrooms and kids going to drag shows are the exact same people who, when their pastor gets caught messing with little kids, they come out and defend their pastor and start saying, well, it was a long time ago and he's repented and he's found God and God forgave him. If you're still bringing your kid to church, you have no right to ever say anything about anyone who brings their kid to a drag show or anyone who's trans, because there are 1,000 times more cases of churches and pastors doing things to little kids than there are anything about drag shows or trans people. I've never even seen a fucking article about that. And yet y'all will complain about those people and still bring your fucking kids to church. The most dangerous place there is for children. What the fuck is wrong with these people? What just happened with this continuing resolution in Congress and the Senate is literal proof of the Democrats are just controlled opposition. I'm sorry, no matter what the situation is, like when Obama had 3/4 of the House and Senate, he had a supermajority. There was always just enough Democrats to stop him from doing like universal health care or any major changes to anything. But whenever the Republicans want to pass some heinous, evil crap, they're always able to get just enough Democrats to switch side because they have to for the greater good or some bullshit like that. And every single time, they have just enough Democrats who will vote for the Republicans to get whatever they need passed. But when it's the other way around, you never see this shit from the Republicans where you get like 5 Republicans who break ranks to pass something to help the Democrats. That never happens. They'll just shut the fucking government down. This is just proof that we need to primary every Democrat in office. I'm sorry, every single one who's been there, they need to be removed. If there's not someone running in your primary against the current Democrat, run against them. Where do you guys get this lie from? We were at war during Donald Trump's entire presidency, his first one. We were in Afghanistan the entire time. He ran on pulling out of Afghanistan, but he didn't actually have the nuts to actually do it. So he didn't pull out of Afghanistan. As a matter of fact, he let out 5,000 Al-Qaeda soldiers into Afghanistan right before Joe Biden took office, which is a really stupid thing to do. But we were at war from all the way through 2016 through 2020. Like, what are you talking about? We were in Afghanistan the entire time. So there was literally a war the United States had soldiers dying in through Trump's entire first presidency. You're just lying. Why do you guys say this? And now Donald Trump has literally started a trade war with our allies. And in case you didn't know, trade wars have a really bad tendency historically to leading to actual fucking wars. And Donald Trump said that we're going to get Greenland one way or the other. The fuck do you think he means? I swear, you guys just lie all the time. I don't know if you just don't know anything or if you're just full on straight up lying constantly. So the Republicans in Congress are ceding their power to Trump. Okay, so when the president declares a state of emergency like Trump did, this is what allows him to unilaterally enact these tariffs and take them off and do all this crazy crap. Anyway, after 60 days of declaring the emergency, Congress can introduce a bill on whether or not the state of emergency is allowed to maintain, because we do have, Congress. And by law, after someone in Congress introduces that day, you have 15 days to vote on whether or not the state of emergency is legal. And because Republicans don't want to vote on the tariffs, so they literally changed the definition of a day for Congress. They want to make it to where for the rest of the 119th Congress, a day is the entire rest of Congress, the rest of the time they're in there. And you should be really terrified of this, because there are a lot of presidential powers that can be enacted that Congress gets a certain number of days to, override or not, including war. Like, the president can invade another country legally, and Congress, after a certain number of days, can vote on whether or not to take those powers back and get us out of that war. But if they make it to where all of Congress is just one fucking day, then Trump can literally start a war with anyone he wants and no one can stop him. Are you okay with this, MAGA? Because this is literally just destroying the Constitution. One of the things that's really fucked up is when, people like Elon Musk say that there's going to be a little bit of economic pain, or people like Trump talk about how there could be, some downturns. To them, a little bit of economic pain is just like their portfolio drops a little bit, and then they get to buy more of the market on basically at a discount, and they get to end up richer later. That's why they always say, but it'll turn out better later, because they get to buy stocks at a discount, and then when the recession's over, they get to watch their portfolio go up. But it's not temporary for the person who loses their house. Like the 100,000 people who are losing their jobs because of them firing all these federal workers, this isn't temporary pain for most of them. A lot of them are going to lose their house will be foreclosed on, so the banks will fucking get it, and these people are going to end up homeless. Like, what's temporary pain for a fucking billionaire isn't even pain at all. Their lives will not change at all. But it's fucking devastating to, the middle class person who loses their job. It's so fucked up, man. These billionaires just need to go. Have you guys seen all these videos of all these cops standing around guarding Tesla stores and cars? Why the fuck is our tax money guarding companies? This should piss you off. I don't care if you're on the left or on the right. I saw more cops standing in front of a Tesla fucking showroom than I've ever seen at a school during a school shooting. What the fuck? Like, some of these videos have literally like 9 cops standing in a circle around a Cybertruck. What the fuck are you doing? Why the fuck is taxpayer money paying for the private security of a company? This just goes to prove what's always been true. Cops are there to protect capital. They're not there to protect you. They're not there to serve the public. They're not there to defend the public. They're there to protect capital from the public. When it comes down to it, every single fucking time, the cops will shoot you to protect a fucking car. ACAB. You know, I see a lot of people, especially boomers and Generation X, complaining that nobody wants to work anymore and that nobody has a work ethic or work integrity and all this crap. The reason is because employers no longer pay enough for the American dream. That's it. That's simple. Why should any employee be loyal to a company or put in 110% for a company if that company's not going to provide enough for you to have the American dream you were sold your entire life? I mean, in the 60s and 70s, you could work at a grocery store as a regular person working at a grocery store, and you could buy a house, have a car, probably have 2 cars, take vacations, and your wife probably didn't even have to work, or at least one of you didn't have to work. Today, both people in a couple have to work full fucking time, and they can't afford to buy a house. Why the fuck would anyone put in 110% for companies that don't provide what everyone was promised? Okay, so Donald Trump might have hit a new low. He did an infomercial in front of the White House for Tesla cars. Like, I swear to God, if it wasn't for the fact that it was in front of the White House and it was Donald Trump and Elon Musk doing it, I was literally waiting for one of them to pull out a sham wow and start, like, wiping the car down with it and talking about how great it was. Like, it was literally like a poorly written infomercial for Teslas. Like, if you had told me, even like a year ago, that the President of the United States would be filming an infomercial for a car company in front of the White House, I'd have called bullshit. I would have been like, there's no way any president would stoop so low and look so pathetic as to shoot a fucking commercial in front of the White House. But I guess I overestimated Donald Trump. Like, this is a level of pathetic and sad that, like, I mean, MAGA, are you for this? Because it's just kind of degrading to the rest of us. So Doge and Elon Musk are going to cut off the Social Security phone line and said that everybody will have to use the internet or in person to register and deal with Social Security. Because, you know, I'm sure all those 70 to 80-year-old people who've probably been using the same phone line for the last 10 to 20 years to deal with their Social Security are just going to be totally up on just grabbing the internet and figuring out the Social Security website. Or they're going to be totally mobile enough to go down to a Social Security office and do it in person. Man, this is going to get people killed. This is fucked up. You know how many, like, little old people, like, live by themselves, don't have a lot of family, and probably only use the Social Security phone number because they're not real computer literate? I mean, it's not like most people you meet in their 80s are real good with the internet. Like, this is fucked up. How much could this phone line possibly cost to make it worth killing a bunch of old people? What the fuck is wrong with these people? Okay, now this is hilarious. You don't make any sense to me. I had to go to your profile because I noticed that your name was True Earthers Unite. And I was like, wait, is this guy a flat earther? So I went and checked out your page. And yeah, you're a flat earther. Why the fuck do you support Elon Musk? That's the most confusing things I've ever heard in my life. Elon Musk wants to go to Mars. He spends billions of dollars of tax money on his space program. And you think we live on a flat earth and that all space programs are a lie. So you literally think that Elon Musk is lying to you about the fact that space is real, but you don't think he's lying to you about what he's doing in the government. How does your brain work? So you think that Elon Musk is spending billions of dollars of your and my tax money, wasting it completely on going to space, which you think is not even real. So he literally is knowingly wasting our money to go to space, which isn't real because the world's flat according to you. And yet you support this guy. The doublethink in your brain is amazing. Yeah, it's really crazy to me that anyone who's working class is for privatization. Like, the idea that private companies are more efficient than the government just makes my brain hurt. Have you ever dealt with a health insurance company? It's the worst thing in the world. Like, I know people who are really poor, so they get all of their health insurance covered by Medicaid. And they have way less problems with their health insurance than anyone I know who's in my tax bracket who has to pay for their fucking health insurance. Health insurance is so fucking terrible. Like, you try to go in and they deny it, and they do this and they deny it. We're like, poor people's Medicaid pays for most things and most places take it because it's government insurance. And there's not a profit guy. Like, the whole idea with privatizing things is now there's a CEO and a bunch of shareholders who are siphoning profit off of it. I mean, that's why the prison population has gone up so much since we started privatizing prisons. Because if you put a profit motive behind there being criminals, there's going to be a lot more criminals. If you put a profit motive behind people being sick, you're going to have a lot more sick people. The idea that most people on the right can't figure this out and they want to privatize everything like that makes it better. Like, have you ever dealt with a private health insurance company? And you'd rather do that? It's fucking insane. So did you guys see Elon Musk out here now saying openly that they want to cut entitlements? And in case you didn't realize, entitlements are the things you're entitled to, like Medicaid, Social Security, Medicare, things you've been paying taxes on your entire life. The billionaires want to get rid of that so that they can throw the Social Security money into the stock market and they can, collect fees and make a bunch of money off of your retirement. That way, when the stock market drops 30%, your Social Security goes down too. And their goal is to fire half of the Social Security Administration staff. That way, when you go to apply for Social Security, it will be horrific and you won't be able to get a hold of anybody and it will be terrible and the checks will start, being late and bad shit will happen. And then everyone will start complaining about how Social Security doesn't work for shit anymore because they fired half the staff. And they'll be like, well, because Social Security doesn't work so well, now we have to privatize it because it'll work so much better if it's private. That's just a scam. They're gonna steal your Social Security.